Now, if you read the second paragraph, and it says, in a sense, we've come to, from Dr. Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech, paragraph 4, it says, in a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check.
In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check.
When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence,
when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence,
they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir.
They were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir.
This note was a promise to all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Now, anybody who has actually understood that level of history, yes, that was a promissory note to men, but it was not actually a promissory note to descendants of American Indian women. So those men were still considered 3/4 of a human being. So the question is, how come in 1963, if you look at any tape of Martin Luther King, you will see that thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people were protesting for the treatment they were in their own homeland. So how come in 1963 everybody understood that Negro people were the Indians, and by 1993, 73, we now became Africans?
Wow.
Okay, so there's been a defrauding going on here. But the question we should be asking, why are we changing our name? And who's influencing us to adopt an artificial identity? Now, I understand that African word may have been a suggested political word. But to change our ethnic identity to African, where did this agenda come from? Well, the agenda actually goes back all the way to the 1890s, in which our own beloved, that many black historians call to, Frederick Douglass, made a comment about. And I tell people to refer to Frederick Douglass, The Folly of Colonialization, in which Frederick Douglass says it is a proposition to colonize the colored people of America in Africa. What does that mean? It means that they want to make the indigenous American people defraud themselves and move voluntarily into Africa. Now, what would that consist of? That means that you would come there and invade another group of people's land, under the ideology that you have an inherited right to a land you don't belong to. How many of us here, the DNA BS, Gates, we got DNA, he got DNA to somewhere in Africa. Oprah promoting a school in Africa, but yet she doesn't promote anything here in America. We just have to return to our nature. Now, how to do that takes education. But the Foundation for Indigenous Americans has already started to set the groundwork for all Negro descendants to register so that they can be counted as Indigenous Americans. It's not hard. It's a simple step. Anybody, especially anybody born after 1950. Because as we know, if in 1963, all of us, all our elders knew that they were Indian. The question is, why didn't they tell the generations after that what their birthright was? Even though we may not like what has become of what our ancestors left us, it's up to every generation in their truth to make a stand and make a change. But we don't have a right to deny the future generations the inheritance of life given to them because of the mistakes of our ancestors in the past. We need to take stock in who we are. Now, why haven't we taken stock? Because we haven't taken a moment as a people to understand why we are being oppressed. Oppression always goes down. But I think now that we're in the belly of the beast, it's time for us to understand our story. And the greatest legacy we have is our heritage. All Black American people are the American Indians, period. And the racial identity of all Indians is brown skin with beautiful curly hair from every level of wavy to the curliest of curl, from the lightest of cream to the bluest of black, to the broadest of nose and the fullest of lip, to the Asian iconic eyes. That is who we are. That is our ethnicity. And as you see, you look at this beautiful sister. She's 10,000 years old, found right here in America. All right? She is one of us. Think about it. I know this sister, her descendant who looks just like her, living today in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's just to show that we've been in America for thousands upon thousands of years. And our ancestors have made tremendous contributions to America. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be standing in our truth. Especially sisters, because there's a very propaganda to beat sisters and disrespect them for their right to be mothers. Why is that? And this is a form of genocide. All of these things are a form of genocide. So if anyone tells anyone that they are not indigenous, then you bring them back to Martin Luther King. Because Martin Luther King represented indigenous people on his homeland as an indigenous American man. We are not Black Americans. We are indigenous Americans. And America is us.
Free at last.